Occasionally in WoW, when a player slows down and decides to read the quest text, they'll discover some of the most heartbreaking lines of text in the game. In this list, we'll be going over some of the more sadder quests in the games that surely pull on someone's heartstrings. And at number 10, we have the Stay a While quest from Dragonflight in the Waking Shores. This is one of the most recent sad quests to be added in WoW, and upon discovery of it, it quickly became one of the most infamously known quests in modern WoW. It's incredibly simple to do, and starts off with you approaching a red dragon in their dwarven visage form. At first, they are quiet and simply reflecting on the Dragon Isles and its lands after not having been to it in nearly 10,000 years. It's almost unrecognizable to the dragon, and he goes on to tell you how he began to believe he'd never be able to return to his original home. Eventually, he begins to reminisce on the history of the dragons and speaks about the war they had against the Black Dragonflight when Neltharion, known as Deathwing, was corrupted by the old gods. He talks about how these dragons were as close as family to him, and suddenly to have to fight them with no way to snap them out of it broke his heart. His previous friends were now killed as brothers and sisters, and he had to do something. Veritistras talks of a personal friend they once had during the war, and how they used to pull pranks on the elder dragons in their youth before they left the Isles. The entire time he can't even recall his friend's name, but he can remember the way the light reflected off of her scales and face. Eventually it corrodes into the remembrance of when they came home to find the same friend standing over the corpses of his family and having to put her down because of such. The Red Dragon thinks of how they may have been able to cleanse their friend similar to Abyssian if they had just been a better friend. It hits incredibly close to home for many as he turns his most traumatizing memories from millennia ago and what he wishes he had done differently. Eventually, he mentions a time capsule he left behind with items from before dragons departed for the island years ago. The most important item he left behind was a letter that describes the fall of the Kaldari Empire due to the Sundering. To not trust the Black Dragonflight because something has happened to them that makes them vicious murderers, and a description of the dragons going to aid the mortals of Azeroth and to live life to the fullest. It's nothing insanely special like many other quests in WoW where you're given a death-defying task or some crazy epic adventure. Instead, you just simply sit with an old soul and listen to him speak about history and learn from it. And at number 9, we have Admiral Taylor and his garrison followers in Warlords of Draenor. In Warlords, players are given the ability to build their own garrisons where they can customize the buildings within, and to be given special tasks depending on what they build. Admiral Taylor, an NPC players have grown to know since Cataclysm, was one of these examples, despite being an NPC. They had their very own garrison in the Spires of Iraq, and upon visiting it, you'll find the entire garrison is mostly unfinished and is completely filled with the ghosts of those who used to inhabit it, soldiers and citizens alike. Admiral Taylor had been with players for quite a while at this point, but most recognizably during Mists of Pandaria, the expansion prior, where he's seen spearheading the war against the Horde on multiple fronts. He even appears at the expansion's climax, Siege of Orgrimmar, aiding players on their journey to dethrone the tyrannical Garrosh Hellscream. When you come across his haunted garrison, you are quickly given the task to uncover the tragedy that has transpired. Every single ghost you encounter has had their minds completely warped, and they don't even recognize that they're dead. They now have to live their lives completely desensitized to any sort of mortal sensations, and not all of them were removed from their narcosis. Slowly, you begin to remind the garrison followers of the memories, and they carefully put together what killed them at the aid of the player. Eventually, you come into contact with Taylor's second-in-command and start removing the traitors of the garrison and recovering cannonballs to defend it. They instruct you to quickly find Admiral Taylor and to save him, only to find out that he and his people were betrayed from within by a man named Ephial. He reveals himself as a necromancer that was promised power by an unknown force. He then torments the remaining souls and forces them into a bone amalgamation to fight the player. The players put him down and then fights Ephial himself, also bringing him down shortly after he mentions an unknown force as the Dark One. This Dark One is completely unknown and is only speculated to possibly be Kel'Thuzad or potentially even the Jailer. Admiral Taylor is then broken free of his shackles but remains a ghost as you talk to him, including his entire garrison. All things considered, it's pretty hurtful watching everybody regain their memories only to realize that they're dead and there's nothing they can do to fix it. Sure, they can still roam the living world, but knowing they can never interact or be truly whole again, all because of one of their own people, is a tough pill to swallow. It certainly doesn't beat what is to come though, and because they do eventually regain their thoughts, it only gets placed at number 9. And at number 8, we have A Letter from Home quest from Wrath of the Lich King. This quest is incredibly short and isn't even a quest chain, just a single quest. Essentially what is happening is the Blue Dragonflight is upset with the mortals for their brazen use of magic and thinks they do not deserve to wield magic any longer. Since the Blue Dragonflight is literally the flight of magic, they make it a goal to stop the players during the events of the Wrath of the Lich King. One of the methods to stop players was to enslave existing Kirin Tor mages to work for them by threatening their families or some other form of blackmail. This is the case for Captain Emmy Malin. She is forced to work for the Blue Dragons against the interests of the Kirin Tor and writes a letter in case she were to be slain in the process. Doing so will cause it to drop, and it reads as follows. Father, I'm sorry for disappearing on you. If you're reading this letter, then I'm dead. I've been forced to work for Malygos' armies under the threat that our family would be killed if I didn't. I feel so ashamed. If there's anything you can do to fight them, don't worry about me. I have them fooled and I'm sabotaging them from inside. I love you, Daddy. M. When you get this letter, you are prompted to return it to Commander Saya Azursteel, who informs you that killing her wasn't your fault and you couldn't have known better about the problem. The commander also assures you that she will deliver the letter to her father. So later on, your character will actually receive in-game mail from the father, Archmage Malin, that reads, "Dear player, Commander Azursteel's personal courier saw to it that I received my daughter's letter. The courier also told me it was you who found it. I just want to thank you for seeing to it that the letter got to me. I know that times must be tough for all of you brave souls who were daring the fight of Northrend. Rest assured that I will avenge Emmy. The Blue Dragonflight will suffer for what they did to my little girl. With the utmost respect and gratitude, Archmage Malin." There is even a Horde version of the same quest, just a different location but the same reasoning. This time it's between a brother and sister troll. The note upon receiving it will say, "Dano Tazini, sorry for disappeared on ya. If you're reading this letter, then I may be dead. I've been forced to work for Malygos' armies under the threat that my family would be killed if I didn't. Tazini wasn't gonna let that happen. Don't worry about me, just keep your kids safe. I have them fooled and I'm sabotaging them from inside. I love you. Sista Tazini." When you return it to Overlord Agmar, you'll make a condescending remark about how Tazini was a traitor, but regardless, returns a note to his sister. The mail you receive in game is basically the exact same as the Alliance version, but instead the names change. It's pretty heartbreaking to know you were the cause of bringing these innocent mages down, but you also knew there was nothing you could have done to change it. It's pretty upsetting to then receive mail from the victims' own families thanking you for the service, despite understanding you were the one that put them down. And at number 7, we have the missing pack questline from Warlords of Draenor. In Frostfire Ridge, the Frostwolf clan has befriended the native wolves of the same name. They form eternal bonds with one another and become quite literally as close as family. To start off this quest, you speak to an orc named Karlak, not the Fire Lady from Baldur's Gate 3, but an orc. He questions where Silvertail and his pack may be and sends the player to go look for him. You find Silvertail alone outside of a nearby cave, missing his mother and father. You inspect the cave and try to find them and see that Silvertail's father has been gutted and left to rot. Their mother is thankfully alive, and you help save them and take them to safety from the cave. The father, unfortunately, is left behind, and there's nothing more you can really do to help them. Silvertail reunites with their siblings and mother and is assumed to adventure off with their mother for future events. And at number 6, we have No Mercy for the Captured from Wrath of the Lich King. This quest is Horde exclusive and takes place in Venomspite next to the New Hearthglen. New Hearthglen is a home for the Scarlet Crusade, while Venomspite is for the Forsaken, a very eternal enemy of one another because one is sworn to kill all undead while the other is undead. What happens is a handful of Forsaken NPCs get captured by the Scarlets and are sentenced to endure high amounts of torture for information on Venomspite's plans. To ensure they do not overshare their plans, however, the player is tasked with killing the captives rather than help freeing them. Depending on what kind of player you are, this is definitely super different than what Blizzard typically asks you to do, especially considering these are your own people as a Horde player. When you encounter the prisoners, they are at first excited to see you, thinking you're there to help them escape. When encountering Deathguard Schneider, he says, "What do you mean my time has come? I'll kill you where you stand." Chancellor Amani says, "What is the meaning of this? Stop. I'll double whatever they're paying you." Engineer Burke will say, "No, I beg you, please don't kill me." Finally, Canadius comments, "You can't possibly mean to. I'll write you up for this." It's really messed up to appear like you're coming to these NPCs' aids just to put them down for no reason at all, especially since they can't actually fight back as they're stuck in cages still. It's super easy to assume you could have just broken them out and brought them back to safety, but when you go to turn the quest in after the dark deed is done, the quest giver remarks, "Now, why would we free them when they have a proven track record of getting themselves captured in the first place?" So it's implied that even if you did save them, they would have just gotten caught again and tortured some more until they gave up vital information. Or at least that's what they think would probably happen, which is still not really nice. And at number 5, we have Ysera during her corruption in Val'sharah in Legion. Ysera was known to many players as the aspect of the Green Dragonflight, serving to preserve the Emerald Dream and the many denizens of nature itself. She's also one of the oldest living dragons, and was most recently prominent in the war against Deathwing, removing her aspectral powers in order to bring down her former brother. In Val'sharah, it was a land crafted by the druids themselves to be as close to a direct reflection of the Emerald Dream as possible. A land representative of Azeroth had magic or outside interferences never occurred there. Unfortunately, Val'sharah had begun to fall under the corruption of the Satyr Lord Xavius, following the will of the Old Gods. They would corrupt the World Tree, Shaldrasil, and transform it into the Emerald Nightmare, a completely adjacent faction of the Dream that seeks to corrupt and destroy rather than allow life to flourish fully. During the player's journey to Val'sharah, they're asked to retrieve the Tear of Elune, a pillar of creation itself to help combat Xavius and the Legion. Unfortunately, Xavius corrupts the Tear and uses it to also corrupt Ysera herself. She transforms into a nightmarish version of herself and turns against the player characters. Shortly after, you must put down the former green aspect with the aid of Tyrande, as she now quotes, "Now I must abandon my husband and put down the most beautiful creature I've ever known." As Xavius gave the ultimatum of either saving Malfurion, who was captured at this point, or aid the Kaldari being attacked by Ysera to save the Temple of Elune. Once you reach the temple and fight Ysera, you see the corruption's hold on her as she genuinely believes us to be enemies and isn't sure of her sight. Once you succeed, a cinematic plays where Elune herself reaches down to bring Ysera into her grasp and embrace the dragon into a constellation across the sky, cleansing the tear that corrupted Ysera in the first place. Not only is it insanely rare for Elune to make herself known to Azeroth, but watching Ysera go from this creature completely devoted to the preservation of nature to the exact opposite was hard to witness. And at number 4, we have the Lost in Battle quest chain, or more famously known as Mankrik's wife. In original classic, Mankrik is a lone orc who tasks the player to locate his missing wife. She was last seen in a battle against a massive amount of Quillboar in a small Tauren camp, where they were then separated due to the battle. His wife was soon overwhelmed, and he went into a blood-crazed rage and killed many Quillboars to save his wife, only to wake up to a Tauren druid healing him of the injuries that he sustained. He instructs you to kill a ton of Quillboar for him in vengeance for his missing wife, and once you return, he asks you to also help look for his wife. You unfortunately have to inform the orc that his wife had passed away due to the pigmen. Before you find her though, speaking to him again will have him comment, "Have you found any sign of her at all? The pain in my chest tells me the worst has happened, but I hope you'll find her safe and sound." Once you tell Mankrik that his wife fell in battle, he simply says, "I understand. Thank you, player." It is until Cataclysm that Mankrik is able to retrieve the corpse of his wife and bury her, giving her a proper funeral. You can then see Mankrik is still incredibly distraught over the loss of his wife during these events, because he sees to it personally that any and all Quillboar will die at his blade. He wants to see their homes burned and exterminated completely. It's a classic telling of losing a loved one and the grief overtaking the widow, and is one of the most popular quests in WoW, sprouting many memes and references due to it. Even today, he still reflects on the loss of his wife, visiting the trading post in Orgrimmar searching for a new sword and a bracelet for his new potential romantic interest, Maka. And at number 3, we have the Point of No Return quest from Mist of Pandaria. During Mist, the Yongle, a yak-like alternative to the Tauren, were invading the Kunlite Summit. The Shadowpan were sworn to defend their lands from the invaders attacking the Oxgate, one of the few entry points into the Townlock Steppes in Kunlite. They ask you to help defend the wall at the behest of Lyn and Suna Silentstrike. You do chase the Yongle away, thankfully, but Lyn chases the retreating yak beast and is taken prisoner in the process. When you go to rescue him with Suna, Lyn's wife, you find his body already stripped of his clothing and killed. Suna is completely distraught at the loss of her husband. She blames her friend Ban for not wanting to attack immediately to save him and runs off. In Pandaria's ancient history, the old god Y'Sharaz once resided in its lands and was plucked off from the planet itself by the grip of the Titans. Y'Sharaz was so deeply embedded in the world that when he was removed, he permanently damaged the planet, and his very presence remained for the rest of Pandaria's known existence. His powers are tied directly to your emotions and can manifest literal eldritch horrors if you cannot control them properly. So when Suna runs off with her emotions taking over, the very Shah of hatred begins to overwhelm and possess her. She goes on to massacre Yongle camp and forces them to kill each other. When you find Suna in the camp, she's surrounded by the corpses of the Yongle that took her husband, and due to the Shah forces that have taken over her body, you're supposed to slay her. Once you finally manage to defeat her, she breaks free of the control of the Shah and says that she forgives Ban for everything that may have happened between them, and then passes away shortly after. And at number 2, we have Honoring the Dead. This questline is famously known as the Camp Taraho Massacre. During the event of the Cataclysm, the Alliance were looking to secure further land against the Horde and will launch an encampment on Camp Taraho. They originally did so under the information that the Tauren who resided there were planning an attack. They intentionally attacked when all of the hunters, only hunters who hunted food, not people, had left the camp. General Hawthorne, the Alliance general responsible for the attack, attempted to allow the civilians of the camp to evacuate before the attack. What unfortunately takes place anyway is that despite trying to allow time for civilians, a small handful of them were still killed and the camp was razed to the ground. As a Horde player, the innocents who died in the attack were not offered a proper burial, and the Tauren wished to retrieve their bodies so they could give them their ancestral rights. In Honoring the Dead, Winnoa asks you to help honor the Tauren traditions, and she gives you a funerary totem to complete the quest. When you go to the camp and find the bodies of the fallen innocents, you are given the option to place it and witness some of the final moments of their lives. The spirits speak to you. I ran to wake the others when they attacked. Were they able to escape? I tried to fight off the soldiers with a skinny knife. I can feel the embrace now of all living things. The Earth Mother's eternal peace. Thank you. Alliance. They've surrounded the camp. What are they doing here? Why are they attacking Taraho? Get the children. Run. Run! No, stay with the others. Escort them north away from the fighting. I will stay here with the Wyverns and cover our escape. Go. Wait, is it over? I've been run through. Ah, of course. I understand now. I am expected elsewhere. It's really emotional to see the last moments of completely innocent Tauren, as they even seem to have children present, meaning the attempt to allow the civilians to evacuate wasn't even nearly as successful as intended. It's actually one of the rare moments in WoW lore where the Alliance are actually the ones being the aggressors. It's still referenced to this day because of heated debates about which player faction is the bigger enemy. It seems super strange that Blizzard made the effort to make this event of the massacre seem accidental, but the attack occurred at night and specifically with the hunters, the only possible defenders of the camp, absent. Either way, it's presumed more than just the named NPCs you helped to their funerary rites lost their lives, hence why it's called a massacre. And at number 1 on the list, we have Kyle's Gone Missing. This is a single quest in WoW where you speak to the NPC named Ahab Wheathoof. He tasks you with feeding his prized puppy, Kyle the Frenzied. Kyle has run away from Ahab and it's your job to find him and feed him so he calms down and comes home. His favorite food is strider meat, so you just kill a few striders to give to Kyle once you find them. Once you feed him, he heads straight for Ahab and goes to bed right ahead, thanking you for your aid. It's a pretty normal quest all things considered. But if you have your game volume turned on during the quest, you'll find Ahab sounds a bit different than regular Tauren upon interacting with him. The voice lines of the NPC are actually made by Ysera Chatterton, an 11-year-old WoW player who had been diagnosed with brain cancer in 2007. The Make-A-Wish Foundation would reach out to Ysera, and his wish was to visit the offices of Blizzard Entertainment. During his time there, he would create the quest for this entry and voice the NPC. Ysera would also be given the very first Ashes of Alar mount, as it was a Phoenix mount and Ezra's middle name was Phoenix. Additionally, the Merciless Gladiator's crossbow of the Phoenix from the Burning Crusade was added for him with a flavor text finally crafted to Phoenix's specification, Phoenix being Ezra's character name. Unfortunately, Ysera passed away in 2008, and as news reached the public, the community swarmed to complete his special quest in memoriam of its edition. Blizzard would pay a special tribute furthermore by adding the Elder Ysera Wheathoof in 2009 for the Lunar Festival holiday event. It's rare for Blizzard to add such personalized content for their fans, and Ysera was one of a kind and his quest still exists to this day. You can hear his voice and help rescue his dog whenever you want and honor his addition within Mulgore. And this concludes the list. Blizzard may stumble every now and then with their storytelling, but they've always been good at just randomly pulling on your emotions when you decide to slow down and read the quest text. Were there any sad quests that got close to you that you wish made this list, or have any ideas for future videos similar to this one? If so, let us know down in the comments below.